I am super excited about today's video as it checked the box on so many goals of mine when I first started this video series. Stephanie and I graduated from high school together, but this chat is actually the first time seeing or talking to her in the 20 years since. I don't think either of us would have listed the other as friends in high school, but she was one of the rare few that didn't matter to. If you were genuine and kind, her pleasant demeanor would meet you with the same. Now a member of the teaching faculty of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry at Simon Fraser University, our conversation challenged my education as I attempted to discuss things I have little to no knowledge in. Despite clearly being out of my depth, I was absolutely fascinated by her work, and she was extremely generous with her time, for which I am very grateful. Without further ado, please enjoy my chat with Stephanie Vlachos.
I want to say I appreciate you agreeing to do this.
Of course.
You're obviously not the first person I've reached out to, but I have to say I thought it was totally awesome that I sent you the most obscure request. I sent you a message
And I just said yes without knowing what I was doing.
And you just said yes. I sent you a message that said, would you be willing to let me interview you for a video series that I'm working on? That was it. And your response was yes. And then you asked questions. So I love that. I thought that was awesome.
That's kind of how I like to roll. Because the easy thing is like, I'm not going to answer that question. Like, move on. Like for me, I always feel like don't set up a barrier right away. Like what's the point? It's not going to benefit anyone. It's not like I like to put myself out there all the time, every time, but I just don't want to shoot down any opportunities.
Right.
So I'm okay with being uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I feel like I have a really good sort of sensor for that. So like when I know my limits are being reached, I can always just say, no, that's it, we're done at any point. But like without giving someone or something a chance, like you just never know. How I pushed myself to do things and to get places, I stuck my neck out and just asked, because I always tell my students, like there's nothing wrong with asking. So like, for example, when I was doing my PhD, towards the end, it was like banging my head against a wall. Like we were just getting nowhere. And so I just thought if I got some fresh eyes on this project, it would just provide some sort of insight. It might not be the right insight, but it would be just different insight. So I met up with some guy at a conference whose work I'd been following, and I just said, hey, would you be willing to let me come to your lab? My boss will pay for me to be there, just if you have the space, just so that you can see what I've been doing, and just as ideas pop into your head, because I'm there, let me just sort of shadow in your lab for 4 months. And he was like, that's a really weird thing. We don't do that. And my university was like, we don't do that. And I said, well, why not? And so it happened, and I went down. And then he offered me a postdoctoral fellowship afterwards. And so had I not done that initial, like, can I? Like,
sure,
this is really weird. And we just up and left like within a few months. You know, I think serendipity is what I would use. I wouldn't say it was luck. I wouldn't say it was like preparation. It's the culmination of both, where,
sure,
you know, like I worked my ass off in school.
Yeah.
And, you know, like grad school is like, you know, people think, oh, you have a PhD, you know a lot, you're going to make a ton of money. It's like, you know a lot about something very little that frankly, nobody cares about.
Well, okay.
Well, in my field,
that's probably your experience, but anyways.
Trust me, nobody cares about what I did my PhD on.
We're
Except
gonna
for
get
my old boss.
No, we're gonna get to that.
But I was interested in this person who lived, the guy who has a lab.
Okay.
In Baltimore. He was in Baltimore, and I was always interested in working for him. And this project that he was working on had come up, and I met up with him a couple conferences ahead of time, and he said, oh, that project belongs to someone in my lab. he's looking for his own lab right now. He's taking that project with him. He's likely going to find a spot. So just keep searching for his name and something will come up. And then sure enough, like over the next year it did. And then when it did, that's when I met up with this other guy. But essentially I've been following.
Okay.
So it sounds a little bit creepy. I'm like, oh, I've been
Sure.
stalking you. But that's where it came. Like, I just really wanted to work this really minute question.
What was the question? What was it that you were working on? What was it that attracted you to the work? And don't laugh. I am curious and genuinely curious about it.
So I'll like take a step back. The one thing that I really enjoy and I've always enjoyed about science and research is that we don't have an answer to a lot of questions. And there's nothing in a textbook or you can find online that says like, do this and it will solve your question. So it's all this like playing and guessing. It's like, well, what if I tried this? Or, you hear of like, scenarios where some mad scientist wakes up in the middle of the night and has this dream and writes it down as soon as he wakes up. It's sort of those sort of actual things that happen. That's like, oh, let me just try it. Or maybe it's happening because of this, or maybe it looks like this because of this reason. It's all this unknown and we just get to play and see what happens. And it's that curiosity that I guess always really drove me. So I was trying to understand how a certain type of stem cell in the fruit fly ovary forms.
Okay.
So stem cells are cells that can give rise to many different cell types. So we think about like the embryo and embryonic stem cells. They can give rise to every single cell in our body. And then there are other types of cell types that can give rise to, say, just muscle, different types of muscle. So like skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, those are specialized cell types and stem cells. So I was looking at a very specialized stem cell, but in the Drosophila, the fruit fly ovary. Because it was interesting because we didn't know how that cell got there, but we knew that it did lots of things. But how did it get to the right place? And what was like determining why it was there and how it got there? So
I have a few questions out of that.
Go for it.
Because I had absolutely no idea what you were working on. And
that's okay. No one does. And it's fine.
I don't know why, because like that's. So let me put it this way. Like if you go into a crowded room and and as I don't know, a bartender, for example, nobody has a question for you because everyone knows what a bartender is. Right. Everyone knows what a bartender does. You go into a room and you say, you know what? I've spent the last 4 years of my life trying to figure out where one particular stem cell comes or enters the ovary of a fruit fly. Right. There's going to be a few people that are going to lean their ears in and say, come again? Well, you did what? And so there's going to be questions that come from that. And this is no different. So, so first of all, I'm curious, you studied this, and I'm totally going to botch any of the terminology. Okay. So you studied this particular stem cell within the ovary of obviously a female fruit fly. Right. Okay. Because it intrigued you because you knew it did a lot of stuff and you knew that it was present, but you didn't know when the general scientific, community did not know how that stem cell came to form. So one thing about like a lot of basic research is we are interested in what something does, whether it's like a protein or a cell type or even a tissue, because when something goes wrong, it looks like a disaster, right? So why people are interested in cancer? Because it's so crazy in the way that it sort of metastasizes. It's just unknown. Like we don't know how to control it. And so we try to figure out what are the things that make a cell work normally? And so for this particular cell I was interested in, it's because we had some evidence to say with these particular mutations that we have, we think that there's a mutation in this stem cell that's making these ovaries look just bananas.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and
Is that a
because
pun? Is that a pun because it's a fruit
no,
fly?
no,
Okay.
I like it. Oh, that's a good one, actually. Crap. I'm like too many years behind. That would have come up. That would have been really great.
Yeah. I'm
No, but
always
that
good
was a
for the
good one.
puns. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but generally it's something called reverse genetics. So you see how something is required by seeing how, like what it looks like
hmm
when it's not there. And
hmm
so,
A fruit fly is
right,
almost microscopic. That
right,
the ovaries within that fruit fly and then the subset stem cell of that
right.
ovary has got to be like at what magnification do you actually start to see this?
So we're talking
Yeah.
like, like a micron or like 10 microns in our view field. Now is everyone's getting their genome sequence because of 23andMe and all these other things. Like that data is
I
all
I haven't done
there.
it.
You haven't done it? I haven't done it
No,
either.
no, I don't know. There's it's sort of similar to I describe it very similar to Fitbits, believe it or not. They had this device that would say,
Right,
"Oh, I did 8,000 steps a day or 12,000 steps a day." Okay, great. What are you doing with that data? Are you moving more? Are you eating less? Are you eating better? Are you
right,
drinking more water? Are you picking up the pace? Like, what
right,
are you doing with that data? Or is it just information that you now have that you didn't have before
right.
because it's easy to get? And 23andMe is sort of like that, right?
Oh,
I could
totally.
do it, but what would I gain from it? What would I do with the information? And I
Right.
don't have an answer to that that makes sense to me enough to actually go through with the process.
Well, the full, like I mean, people are getting genome sequencing, like people, like there's a hereditary cancer clinic, things like that.
hmm
So it's existed for a long time, but the
hmm
fact that anyone can do it,
hmm
it's fine to know, to figure out that I'm half Greek, half Chinese. Guess what? I already know that.
What? What?
Like, am I going to learn anything else that I probably didn't know? But just like you're saying, like, what am I going to do with that information?
hmm
Nothing.
hmm
The full analysis to be like, okay, yes, you have this genomic variant that does predispose you to cardiovascular disease.
hmm
Like, it's not a gene that's related to a cancer or whatever, but
hmm
like just this like slight change in a sequence
hmm
doesn't mean you're going to get it, but it's been associated. Like, to get that type of in-depth analysis on your entire genome, it costs
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of dollars, which is not going to happen.
Yeah.
But 23andMe has been bought by one of the biotech companies last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just, and you know what, honestly speaking, it's probably the way that medicine will go.
hmm
Industry is going to make really specific medicine to target very specific mutations that people have and will have. What they do with that, how they market those drugs, that is a whole other can of worms that I don't know much about. And
Sort of introduces the Spider-Man syndrome. With great power comes great responsibility. With great
totally,
access to information,
totally,
and the fact that a large biotech company
right.
now owns this data set and
Yeah,
can market a revolutionary breast cancer
right,
drug that will prevent you from getting breast cancer if you have this genome. Well, the genome doesn't guarantee that you get it in the first place, but it
right.
plays on that fear mentality,
Totally.
and there's a profit to that, right?
And I think that's what 23andMe sort of does. Like, they had to go
hmm
back and change their patents or change the way they were marketing because of their patents, because they aren't a medical um, diagnoses um, service. Like, there are medicines, specifically cancer treatments, that are already being developed that are for specific mutations. And
hmm
the reason behind that is because there are mutations that are made in certain genes that a lot of people with, say, like colorectal cancer will get. And so because this mutation makes cells behave in a certain way, there's these drugs that target that. But what if someone has a different mutation in the same gene?
hmm
They now don't respond to that drug in the same way because the cells are behaving in a slightly different way. I see how academics is broken.
How so?
Um, so this isn't just Canada or North America. This is worldwide.
hmm
you know, someone wants to be a doctor. Okay. And so they have to take in high school, chem, physics, biology, calculus, and then they have to take it in university. Are they ever going to use that chemistry and that physics and that calculus when they're in med school, when they're actually going to be seeing patients? No, we're not benefiting students. Like, students will suck at chemistry or suck at physics and will say, well, you can't be a doctor because you suck at physics, right? But maybe they would be really outstanding doctors because maybe their bedside manners are above and beyond the keener that got an A+ in physics. He has no people skills.
Yeah.
Do I think school is important? For sure. Do I think my children and other people should go to school for as long as I did? Hell no. I've always been really good at being in a lab, but I sucked at writing tests. And that's how academics is based on. Like, you write exams. Like I couldn't do well on a 70% final exam. It was just impossible. It was like, make a decision, either get Fs or make a decision about what you want and be totally unhappy, right? Like, I would have these semesters I would call fat and antisocial semesters where you don't go out, you don't really work, and you don't exercise. Like, all you do is study. And those semesters I did really well in school, but I was so unhappy and fat. You know, like, it's like mental health. I was really cognizant of that early on. Because I just said, I could do it, but I wouldn't be happy. So it's not worth it. It wasn't worth it.
I mean, that's a pretty mature realization for, a 19, 20-year-old to make, right? I think there's a lot of people that are 40 or 50 still haven't made that realization and changed their trajectory. So I mean, good for you. Can you explain in very simple terms what molecular biology is? And I'm gonna specify. I reached out to you in particular based on a Facebook post you did recently, and hopefully you'll remember this one.
Oh, yeah. So my degree was in cell and molecular biology. And my PhD was in molecular biology and biochemistry. And so that all sounds like the same thing to a lot of people. But my bachelor's was in the biology, the faculty of biology. And so cell and molecular biology really has to, when you talk about cell biology, you're talking about like a cell that has different components, like, a nucleus, mitochondria that make energy. They have different components that do different things. So you're looking at how that cell functions as a whole. How everyone's like pulling their weight to make sure the cell is healthy and get everything done correctly. Molecular biology is taking it one step closer. So you're now one step smaller even. So now you're looking at, say, everything that's happening in the nucleus. So how is DNA being made? What's happening to that DNA? Or what's happening to the gene that is made from that DNA? So you're really like going from the whole cell to like narrowing in on something within the cell or a single process within the cell. So you're now looking at literally the molecular level of things. So it is a size thing. Size does have a role.
Size matters.
Yes.
Smaller is better then.
In this
instance.
Field. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. The article, but you responded to an article about COVID.
Right.
And how things spread. And I found your description really interesting in the sense that this is a virus, and of course viruses move through people and they change by nature, and for us to expect anything differently is not it would be silly. And that people read these headlines as coronavirus mutated to AB whatever. Well, yes, of course, because we as scientists, or I say I'm not scientist, as you would just say, that's expected. Why wouldn't we? But now we just have this information. But it was just such a rational post to an irrational media publication, which there's so much of these days.
And that's what drives me insane. So the reason I commented was largely because what it was posted was trying to say, this is how I interpreted it, was I am writing this as I know a lot about science, and I'm going to use the facts that I understand that you don't understand to scare you into freaking out about this virus. And I just felt like those facts aren't wrong, but why are we being alarmist about it? Like, I teach, so one of the courses I teach, we talk about a virus that affects bacteria. Don't worry about anything else, okay? How I just start off that lecture is I say, you are the virus, and your goal is to survive. That is your entire goal, nothing else. So you can either choose this one lifestyle or choose this other lifestyle. Regardless of what you choose, your goal is to survive. And that is how viruses have evolved. And that's why they're still around, because they themselves are not free living organisms. They need a host.
Yeah.
And in this case right now, the host is us.
Yeah.
It's going to mutate because that's what they do.
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing scary about it. And I was just like, let's just lay the cards out. They're going to mutate. And these are from a family of viruses. And we know a lot about the others that have come before it. We don't know about this one. Of course we don't. And if we did, we wouldn't be in this situation. But we know about the others. So we have ideas of what will mutate. And this is a science that I don't quite understand. This is when you get into the bioinformatics of predictions. But people are doing this for not just viruses, for all sorts of things.
Sort of trying to predict on how it will mutate.
What would be the next set of mutations?
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know how they would do that, but people have been doing this.
I think that's why I liked it so much, was because it's so easy to be, one of these keyboard ninjas where, you have a snippet of information that you have an opinion on now, and that's all you can say. You have an opinion on such a small amount of information, because unless you are a PhD in any kind of scientific discipline that can possibly explain this to the layperson, you are not dissecting somebody else's possibly unproperly researched article on this virus, and then now blasting it out to your 300-400 friends as, oh my God, the world is falling. This is what's happening with the virus. It mutated. Well, yeah, let's step back a second, because, that cold you had last year, that's mutated 35 times since then. And you're going to get it again next year. Just so
people say well, why doesn't the flu vaccine work? Of course, it's not going to work perfectly for everyone, because when you get sick in November and I get sick in March, but and I also, the other thing with that post is I didn't want to get into the nitty gritty, because I do know a lot. I'm not going to say I don't know a lot. I do know a lot, but I'm not going to bore everyone with these details. That's where my educator side comes in. Let's make it simple. I
think a healthy amount of fear for a virus that we don't know and don't understand at this point is fine, but I think it's also important to keep our wits and our logic about us. When people are fearful, they do illogical things, right? And they grab at things that they can control. It's the mentality that has removed all toilet paper from store shelves for the last 6 weeks, right? It's not a logical or a rational thing to buy excessive amounts of toilet paper for a virus that does not affect your gastrointestinal system, but it is something that you can control. You can say, I'm good for the virus. I've got myself 24 rolls of toilet paper and nobody else did, because now they're sold out, right?
I'm not also not trying to downplay it, but I don't think us getting fearful about the unknown is in any way helpful. And unnecessary worrying, you can only protect yourself. You can only control what you can control.
Yeah.
Even if that's buying too much toilet paper. It's still technically within your control. But and it wasn't misinformation, but it could be construed in different ways. or interpreted in different ways if the person reading it is untrained.
Which
Most
majority of people would
right.
be, right?
Which is what I don't like.
Yeah. And I mean, that is one of the cons of social media, is that it is
Totally.
so easy
Right.
and quick to spread a message, right?
Yeah.
And they're very rarely fact checked, and headlines are clickbait, and
Totally.
get people going, and like, oh,
Totally.
great, share, read the first 3 sentences, totally makes sense, even though you read the first 3 sentences, and you're like, there's no scientific evidence for that
Right.
at all, or
Right.
basis, right? And so your average person would read that and say, oh, RNA, I heard that on CSI one time, that totally makes sense, right? And so
but the draw of social media, it's not just what you want to see, right? Like if it's everyone's agreeing on the same terms, like, well, this is totally boring.
Yeah. Well, but there is part of that. So
yeah,
a lot of the tech companies, Facebook is definitely in that mix, are coming under a lot of fire lately because their algorithms are essentially confirmation bias driven, right?
Yes.
That your Facebook feed, let's say you have 400 friends on Facebook, you're not getting the feed of 400 friends. You're getting the feed from 30
50
that have,
or whatever,
that have a similar, right? Because
totally.
The goal of Facebook is not to show you a well-rounded view of the world.
No.
The goal of Facebook is to get you to engage with their platform,
right?
And for them to sell advertising. And the way they get you to engage with the platform is to engage with your friends that are sharing content that you agree with, right?
Of the world, yeah. So the Daily had this feature called the rabbit hole, and it is what it is. Essentially, it introduces this guy in his 20s that gets radicalized through YouTube. So then it goes back and it starts at like, out of school, this is what he did, and the YouTube videos he was watching, and then how the algorithms played into, you watch these videos, so then you're going to watch more of these videos and not of anything else.
Yeah.
So it's I've only heard the first 2 because I just saw them just finally released the 3rd one. But it's just like what you were just saying about how you're only seeing what you are seeing, and maybe something that's slightly related, but then they realize, YouTube as a platform realized, well, that's not actually good for us.
At what point does it become censorship, right? If it's only showing us the stuff that we want to see, is that a form of censorship because it's blinding us from a well-rounded worldview?
Yes.
Right. And it's a conundrum I don't really have an answer for. I have more questions than answers for sure. But it's going to be interesting, especially with these big tech companies having more and more control over our information. And there was a book I read, I believe it was either The Power of Habit or no, I think it was actually called Persuasion was this book. And it was a marketing book about actually not persuading, but persuading. And it was like sort of the stuff you can do to lead you into buying certain things. And Target, this is back in early 2000s, maybe even late 90s. Their data set and analytical people had figured out a way to advertise to very specific subsets of people, to the point where they could actually tell when a woman was pregnant before she knew, based on her buying habits. Because there was what was discovered was there was this hormonal change in a woman before knowing that they were actually pregnant that would suggest to them, start nesting, start making, good decisions about your body, take vitamins, go for walks and whatnot. And so to the point where there was actually this executive that worked at Target had called the marketing department and was saying, like, my daughter just got these coupons for baby formula, and she's 17 or 18 or something like that, and like, this is ridiculous. We got to fix the
Right.
algorithm because it's wrong.
Can't be right. Yeah.
2 weeks later, he's like, wow, that's really scary. So then they got on this tangent of, okay, well, we'll send you formula coupons or crib coupons or whatever, to expectant mothers before they even know that they need it, so that by the time they get the coupon, that now they're in, right?
Right.
And there was a certain habit about, like, women would buy something like 1.5 times their usual consumption of milk before they were pregnant. There was some sort of statistic that they discovered.
Right.
So then what they discovered was that men also have an affiliation to that. So then they would start advertising lawnmowers next to baby formula, because there was something to do with the nesting and taking care of the home. And I mean, this is like 20 years ago, right? So you can only imagine
how much
now with the technology. Yeah.
Gosh.
So I'll get
that, and that now, like, they're not sitting there working at it, doing it. They'll just write a script and let it run overnight and figure it out for them. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what, big data is big business, right? For that very reason, because the more you know about somebody, the more you can sell them, right? And
totally.
I mean, there is part of me that thinks, well, I mean, if the only ads I'm going to see on the internet are going to be things that I actually want to buy, then is that really a bad thing? But then obviously you can't just buy everything you see. So
right.
I feel like I've taken up a fair bit of your time. I do have a couple of final questions for you, if that's okay. What podcast do you recommend the most?
This American Life.
Okay.
I listened to other ones that I don't know if I would be recommending.
Okay.
You're covering
your face like you're embarrassed about them.
It's just really silly. So it's these two local guys. Okay. It's called Stop Podcasting Yourself.
Okay.
One is a comedian. One I think is just funny. He works for like CBC. But it's two local guys. One's a dad, the other one is not. And they just talk, and they sometimes interview another comedian.
Okay.
But it's almost like a Seinfeldian type of humor. Like, what they actually talk about is not really that funny, but just the way that they say it or how they present it is hysterical to me.
What was your worst job ever? Or what job had the worst experience that you remember?
Or an incident happened with a manager. We were just standing at the bar. It was like in between a day shift and a night shift. I was just leaning over, and he put his hand down the back of my pants.
Seriously?
Yeah. And I was just like, whoa.
What did you do?
What are you doing? Right? I was like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
So I went straight to the president of this manufacturing.
And what happened?
He got fired.
Well, that's good.
Like on the spot, pretty much. But I was, at that time, I was like younger in senior.
You couldn't have been that old, right?
No, I was like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
But I was like outcasted by like a lot of the staff, because they were like, why would you get him fired? Like, he was a manager. Like, what is he supposed to do for work? I'm like, he stuck his hand down my pants. Like,
so they all knew what happened.
Yeah. And they're like, how is that okay? And they're like, he was joking. I'm like, he stuck his hand down my pants.
Yeah. I didn't read it
like,
wrong.
Hello?
Yeah.
Like, how was that okay with any of you?
Wow.
So yeah,
and both male, female, like, it didn't matter. They did not understand why.
They were just thought like I should have just kept it to myself. Maybe like told him off, but I like shouldn't have taken it anywhere else. And I was like,
no, thank you. Yeah.
But that like that's just my prerogative, right? Like,
sure,
that's my personality saying like, oh, that was totally wrong. Screw you. But I know a lot of people wouldn't have handled it that way.
Well, it'd be interesting. I mean, especially the women that didn't agree with you getting him fired. It'd be
oh
interesting
yeah,
if it had happened to them, if they would have felt the same way, right?
yeah.
And
And
wow,
because I was
that's
younger, this guy was older. Like I didn't know him as well as maybe because they were probably all friends with him and thought, oh, he's definitely
sure.
joking. And he may have just been joking around. He maybe thought I wouldn't have
Yeah,
taken it that way, but
I've done a lot of joking in my life.
you
Not
wouldn't have done that. Like,
ever,
yeah,
not
yeah.
ever have I put my hand down somebody's pants.
Isn't it
Right?
just a
Like,
weird thing to do? Like, I wouldn't
yeah,
have
like
even
that.
thought that.
It's not. Yeah, that's
Is it
not
not like he was drunk? This is in the middle of the day.
sad. Okay, well, I think that gets like your worst experience,
Yeah, I
anyways.
mean, but I still worked there. Like, I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
but he wasn't
well,
there anymore, right?
yeah.
So if you could give your 20-year-old self a piece of
Oh,
advice, what would it be?
it's all worth the sacrifice. That and, you know, if things came easy, everyone would be doing it. Sacrifice and perseverance is not meant to be pain-free and easy and happy all the time.
What is your go-to feel-good food?
Grilled cheese sandwich.
Tomato soup?
Yeah. I think that's like my sunny, like, you know, my Sunday, rainy Sunday afternoon. Like, what do I want to eat? That's what I want to eat. And I tell this to my trainer, like, I eat well, but I snack poorly. Give me a
Nice.
box of Family Digestives with the chocolate, on one side.
Yeah.
Like one
Hobnobs?
row will be gone. I'll be like, oh,
Yeah. Do you
so
like hobnobs?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, I just can't buy those because I will eat
Oh
like the
yeah.
whole
Yeah.
roll.
My willpower extends to not having things in the house.
Right. But yeah,
All
this is
right.
great. Thanks for doing this. This is
Yeah.
it's cool. It's like engaging, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's not just like catching up with like, oh, friends that I usually see. It's like been really nice to chat with someone that I haven't chatted with at all in like 20 years.
That's 100% what my goal is. Like I
Awesome.
think I am genuinely curious about so many things that I, perhaps much like your husband, have a hard time focusing on any
Mm,
one thing. So when you
yeah.
said like, he's still trying to figure out his direction, like
Yeah.
I am very curious and interested about so many things that it is hard to find just one thing that I could focus on and turn into a career. I mean,
Right.
I have
Yeah.
done it with a number of things, but that is one of the struggles that I have is just nailing down one thing.
Yeah.
So this sort of scratches an itch of I can play in multiple
Right.
sandboxes
Totally.
and have fun and there's been some really interesting stuff that I've learned about people that I didn't know before. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
That's super cool.
it's been great catching up with you. Good to
Yeah,
sort of
likewise.
see
Sort of see
you.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, and we
totally.
will certainly schedule that get together as soon as
Yeah,
we're actually allowed
that
to.
sounds great.
All
All
right,
right. Thanks again.
all right. Take care.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
You
Bye.
too.